So, main character syndrome. I'm gonna be real. I actually have always known what main character syndrome is. Just after a couple years of hearing the term be thrown around and getting into the nitty gritty of what it means, I just now know the name for it. It's like when you're learning something in a subject in school and you know what you're talking about, you just don't know the title for it. And then you figure it out. Okay, so this is what it is. And chances are you, me, or anyone else has come across someone with this kind of extreme narcissistic personality disorder known as main character syndrome because it's been around since before clout chasing was a thing. I think that social media has just done a really good job of amplifying it and making it more common. You mix that with lack of good guidance figures or lack of good parental figures for a lot of the generation coming up, you start to see why it's becoming more and more common. Because if you don't have a guide, you tend to follow an ideal that you can pick up so you can have a sense of purpose or belonging, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. We're on this planet. We try to find our reason for existing, and we just want to find our synchronicities with society. But now it's kind of to the point where you see someone on social media thinking they're more important when they just have the job of being an influencer. They don't really have to work too hard. They are surrounded in a social media bubble. They're hypersensitive to any sort of criticism because how dare anyone talk to them in that way, even if it's deserved. But that's the general definition of main character syndrome I'm going to use for this one because like a lot of these different like terms like red pill, etc., it gets blown out of proportion and it morphs over time, and then before you know it, it's misused where it doesn't belong. So I'm going to set the baseline and say that it's because it's someone who just thinks that they are the main character in life. Everyone else has to go along with the script, behave the way they expect them to, and if they don't, then they are antagonists, and must be dealt with. Because I'm pretty sure everyone on this realm who is watching this video right now has probably been able to raise their hand and say, "Yep, I've dealt with someone like this." In fact, I have multiple stories, multiple times where I had quote-unquote best friends who I was really looking out for. They were not in my corner and when I needed them. And you know what? They don't have to be. But when you realize that a relationship or a friendship is not a two-way street, I think it's time that people should happily be able to walk away from it. But if you're in one of those one-sided relationships or friendships where you end up being a doormat and you choose to walk away, and then the person who is treating you like a doormat has a problem with it because you're not the side character in the movie The Legend of insert the narcissist name here, then yeah, that person has main character syndrome. Recently, I dealt with something like that because I went to a party with a friend, right? And his old roommate was there, and he left the living situation because his old roommate just wasn't in the same realm of existence as him. The roommate just had more ambitions, and he realized that his roommates just made terrible decisions. So moving out really triggered that guy, and it was weird because he spent the whole party like eyeballing me for some reason, like I had anything to do with their living situation switch up. I don't even live with the guy. I just was invited over to his party, and then I realized that, yeah, no, that's one of the things that my friend said about this guy is that he had serious main character syndrome. And when you see it up front in the modern sense, right, it's pretty bad. All about his social media, all about his stuff, all about chasing that influencer dream, which I gotta admit, like, it is a big trend to try and be an influencer. Everybody wants the world to pay attention to their life like it's a sitcom, even though if you watch a lot of these vlogs, a lot of their stuff is very boring and mundane and not very exciting or has anything worth of value to really say much. And then they get upset when they don't look at themselves or what kind of content they're making because it has to have a purpose to it. It has to have content that serves the type of person that would want to click on the content, not just about you. And you can't get mad at people for not wanting to click on see a life that really just doesn't have anything that interests them. Just like this content, I thank everybody for going onto this channel and watching my videos. I'm seeing my views go up, and it's very grateful. It encourages me to make more content on any of these internet projects that I have, not just this one. I'm not going to plug anything with each other just yet, just because I want to make sure that my other projects are earned and it's built a following. But when you see those numbers go up and you see that you're actually working for the audience, then you have healthy growth, healthy sustainability, and just overall, you realize that this is not just about me getting a voice out here, but it is about you guys, the followers, for helping me out on my journey and my story. Because bottom line, I know I'm not the main character to life. Now, to my own story, then yes, I am the center, just like everybody else. I always encourage people to self-love, and I don't think that people think that's what it means. Now, everybody who is a people pleaser tends to go on this moment where they wake up and realize how harmful people pleasing could be, because then you could lose your identity, get taken advantage of quite a bit. And it's just, I know a lot of people want to be the healers of the world, but it's just not a realistic thing. That's something that is a collective genuine effort from everybody involved. Like, everyone would have to make a sacrifice in one sense or another, but is everybody willing to make that sacrifice? Meaning, I have sacrifices, no, I'm not willing to make just yet. And I don't feel like anyone should force me to, just like I wouldn't force anyone to make their sacrifices. But I do have to say that everyone should look after themselves first. It's like you've probably heard this from your local therapist. It's like a plane's going down and you need to put on your oxygen mask before you help anyone else get their oxygen mask on. Because it's going to set the baseline for how people respect you. But obviously there comes a time where you have to realize, am I affecting anybody else? Am I making anybody else uncomfortable? Am I acting in a way that's going to make anyone else feel really bad? And a lot of people, not just on social media, but in real life, tend to not feel that. I see a lot of people who are oblivious to their own demons and aren't actively seeking it. Now, that is their journey to do, because that used to be my problem. Is I used to think that I was the one to point that stuff out, and that was very pretentious of me to do. But I'm not the main character of a story called Hey Arnold. The only thing I'm a character of is a main character of Z Hut's life. Not the main character or the guide of everybody else's. Everyone's got to walk their own journey. And as long as you don't affect other people or harm other people, or like intentionally or not, or if you do unintentionally harm someone and someone brings it to you, you should apologize, I believe. I mean, life's not all black and white. It's a very gray area, but there's a lot of different ways you could word it. But when people think that just because someone doesn't go along with what they want to think or anything like that, and it's not even necessarily that someone has done them wrong, it's just that they thought differently or didn't go along with their thought process, that's the type of main character syndrome. Now, to the people who don't have main character syndrome, I do have a word of advice, because I don't want to just ramble about what main character syndrome is, because then I'm just repeating the same video that's been made time and time again, because content like this is becoming a lot more common. I'm very aware of it. But for those of you who don't want to take part of it, I recommend that you don't take part of it. Those who have a conscience, who don't want to hurt anybody, who just want to live and let live and just be a character of your story. And when it comes time to have that sitcom crossover, everyone's got the equal spotlight and everyone's in the same realm and no character is important as another. I always like to think of it as that, like, comedy Friends, where everyone's got their chance to shine, but no one really outshines the other, because we all have our own talents, we all have our own voices. It sounds a little hallmark when I say this, but you feel where I'm going with this. To the people out there who can't seem to notice that other people have feelings, other people have a way they're going to look at it, right? And how dare anyone rain on their parade or hurt their ego in any way? Like, those main character type people who go out to the superficial clubs and look out for the superficial content and try and play that superficial game, they're going into basically a giant arena where their ego is not allowing them to see that they're not the only person playing this, oh, I'm the main character game. And eventually they're going to find someone who out main characters them, and then their ego is really going to get hurt, and then they're going to have a problem, and then they're really going to understand how they've probably made other people feel. Now, whether you should forgive them or not, I'm not going to give you that advice. That's up to you. You all have your story of dealing with narcissists, but yes, I can't tell anyone how to think about that. But there are quote-unquote main character syndrome people who have made it so unbearable for me that have left such a bad taste in my mouth. I said, look, I forgive you, my friend, but I don't want anything to do with you, because sometimes, hey, man, some people have to lose you. Let them be in that realm, because it's like a game of Assassin's Creed Online. I don't know if you guys ever played Assassin's Creed 3 and remember that, where everyone's trying to sneak up on each other and stab each other in the back. That's the game they play. And I don't want to play a game where I constantly feel like I have to look over my shoulder every moment of my life. It just doesn't seem plausible. Because I'd rather be with other people who don't have main character syndrome and build lasting relationships and memories with those people, because some of the people with main character syndrome may never wake up. And if they're going to stay in that superficial realm and think that they're more important than anyone else, eventually they're going to get out main charactered, or someone outside of the main character realm is going to stand up to them and really burst their bubble and make things very uncomfortable for them. And you know what? They usually have something like that coming. Like that person who's hogging up 5 different machines at the gym because they're filming this super important video on their fitness influencer feed. Some big buff dude is going to come and enforce that, no, you cannot hold 5 machines at once. And sometimes filming yourself working out can be very, very cringe. Unless you're checking out your form, then yeah, by all means go ahead, because you can't always have a spotter or a third person out there watching to see how you're doing. But reality has a way of checking those people. And we're going to see a lot of people get checked because the quote-unquote main characters are so common nowadays. But as you build your relationships with the people who are not main characters and who want to have meaningful relationships, and there are people out there like that, I promise you, not everybody is far gone and sucked into the vacuum that is social media. Even though sometimes it can seem like that, but when you build those communities and build those structures where you guys understand each other and value one another, that's where you actually win. Because those people who are chasing those clout chases and those Logan Paul style sponsorship deals and stuff, they're going to realize that they are living in a very shallow society. And once you look at those giant influencers and how they end up in the long term, they usually end up pretty screwed up. But I'm going to land this plane right now by saying one thing. If you want to be the main character of your own story, please do, but there is no main character of life. That's when we are all in a collective online game where there are no main characters. We are just RPG style players, and we all need to either coexist or not. Peace out, guys. Stay away from main character syndrome.